I was curious about why Europe is called Europe, so I did a little digging, and this is what I found. So apparently there was this Phoenician woman, and Phoenicia was a civilization in what is now modern day Lebanon, about 2,500 or so years ago. And there was this woman called Europa, and it's all mythical, but basically Zeus came along from Greece and basically transformed himself into a white bull, and she came over, patted him, sat on his back, then he ran off towards the sea, went over the sea, transformed himself back to Zeus, and they married on the island of Crete and had loads of famous mythical babies. Now the thing is, he's first mentioned, this myth is first mentioned by Homer, but we don't quite know whether this is genuinely the origin of the name. There's still a lot of dispute as to whether this is the origin of the term Europe. First, the meaning of what we count as Europe has changed several times over history. So understandably, based on that myth, Europe first came to mean this area around the Aegean Sea, near Greece. Then the Romans kind of slightly tweaked the meaning, so it became a Thracian territory, and Thracians were a civilization here towards the Black Sea. Then later monks, during the Carolingian period in France, which is about 800 or 900 AD, called Europe this Western Christian part of the continent. So it got defined in more of a cultural way rather than a geographical way. And it's interesting that in the Hindi language today, Europeans are still called Firang, based on the French or the Franks who originated this term. Then the border of Europe shifted as well several times. So Herodotus, who by the way disputed that myth about Europe coming from Europa, he regarded the actual border to be the Rioni River going through Georgia in the Caucasus. But this understanding got transformed by the Romans, and then it got pushed further east to be the Don River going through Russia. But we now regard it to be the eastern border of Europe to be the Ural Mountains, much further back into Russia. An interesting final note, if you go back to that original story I told you about Zeus capturing Europa, which is our best guess as to the origin of the name, well, the Roman equivalent of Zeus was Jupiter. And can you guess what we called one of the moons of Jupiter when we discovered it using the telescope? We called that moon Europa.